There are things lurking in the woods that we just cannot explain. Every year, hundreds of people go missing in the woods, whether it be from hunting accidents, the elements, or maybe something darker. But that doesn't stop us from going and exploring deep in the woods anyway. These subscribers sent in their allegedly true, creepiest encounters while exploring deep in the woods. If you have a story you'd like to share, whether it be something from deep in the woods or a different kind of story, be sure to send it in to swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I'd love to share your story. Joining me today are my good friends The Strangest. They help me narrate some of these stories. So, if you enjoy their voice, be sure to check their channel out and subscribe. Now, let's get into these tales of terror. This following is a disturbing experience that my friend and I had when I was 15 years old. I went to a private school with not many friends. If you ever went to a private school, you know the struggles of doing so. My friend Mason called me asking if I wanted to chill, and I said for sure, keeping in mind that at the time I was very depressed, and I was usually resorting to smoking a substance with a friend. I'm not a smoker anymore, thankfully. But at the time, I was super into it. The second I arrived at Mason's house, I felt something was off. I just assumed this was me being paranoid that his parents would catch us smoking. The two of us grabbed our stuff and got ready to smoke. Mason's woods are huge and easy to get lost in, but we still chose to smoke there because it's a good place to do so privately. We walked for quite some time, until we reached a clearing with a chill tree that seemed like a great place to light up at. Mason and I were smoking, chilling, and laughing it up, holding a deep conversation until we heard this deep, chilling scream. It sounded like something screaming, with a throat full of blood. We both looked at one another to reassure each other we had both heard the same thing. Hearing this, Mason and I jumped up to our feet and ran towards the direction of his house. So, here we are. High teenagers in the middle of the woods, running as fast as we can into the sunset. It's about to be pitch black out with nothing except a bong and whatever the hell made that disturbing scream. It was after walking 2 hours in the woods, terrified by whatever was out there, that it began to sink in that we were lost now. Mason was swearing about being lost when he was interrupted by some branches snapping. Suddenly, the whole entire forest went dead silent. We looked at one another terrified when out of the silence we heard the godforsaken scream come again. The sound was close enough this time that our ears were ringing. Looking in the direction of the sound, what we saw next we will never forget. There was this huge cluster of dense woods next to us leading to a river, and from behind a tree comes out this thing. It looked to be 7 feet tall, and it had a deer carcass as a head, with these large claws. It also had this disgusting, rotting chest that looked pale. The thing's arms were down to its knees, and the most creepy thing is that this thing was smiling. Mason and I screamed and ran as fast as we could. As we ran, we kept tripping on roots and running into branches. This monster was keeping perfect pace with us as we ran and stumbled. When we finally made it out of the woods, we were gassed and we were in the tree line of the playground in this neighborhood. It was about 10 p.m., and we began running again when we heard this thing in a strangely unusual voice say, "Until next time." We bolted the rest of the way to his house and ran up to his room. The whole night I could hear screaming and scratching at the door downstairs. Mason and I aren't as close anymore since that incident, though we do still talk from time to time. Close or not, we'll never forget that night.
This happened on November 2nd of this year, 2018. I was just getting out of work, and I decided to see if any of my friends wanted to hang out and probably spark up. My hours were shortened thanks to winter scheduling, so I got out at 9 instead of 10. The moment I got out, I called my friend Bobby to see if he wanted to drive around with me and go smoking at this hiking trail in my town since it just got a new parking area recently. I picked him up and we smoked on our way to the trail. My town is small, and it only took 5 minutes to get there. The trail we were on is out of the way, so there isn't much light or housing in the area. We pulled up in front of the trail, and I stopped in the middle of the road. It's typically dark by 9 during the winter, but this darkness was a thick black tarp enveloping the parking area, so we decided screw that, and we left. My pride being wounded for driving away like that, I told him to hit up my cousin Mike. Me and my cousin had a falling out in high school, but I thought it was about time that we buried the hatchet. We picked Mike up and started telling him about the trail, and he agreed he thought it'd be a fun idea if we went. Feeling safer with another person tagging along, we came up the dark wooded road and pulled into the parking area. We got out and started walking towards the trail. Some info about the trail is it splits into 2 parts, so you can go from one end all the way around, or you can go up the hill and go all the way around. We had our flashlights on our phones on, and we decided to go all the way around. As we walked through the wet leaves and over roots, we came to an object in the path. "That looks like a cross, my guy," I said. Mike and I stopped in our tracks, as we'd seen enough horror films to know it's the ones that get curious and investigate who wind up dead. Bobby, on the other hand, seems to have had balls of steel, or a death wish, because he just kept walking towards it. "It's just a trail sign," he called out. We started walking after him when I got a very weird feeling. It felt like the butterflies you get when you're nervous about something, but it was deeper than that, and it made me feel very uneasy. I let Mike know something felt quite off. "Yeah, I don't like being out here either, to be honest," Mike said. Soon after saying this, he stopped and let me know he heard something. I laughed, swearing I wasn't going to fall for that childish prank. Unfortunately, when we were almost to Bobby, I heard a rustle in the woods. I stopped in my tracks and pointed into the distance. Initially, there was nothing, so I thought we imagined it, but as Bobby started walking back towards us, the sound of leaves crunching in the woods followed. It was a lot like something trying to quietly stalk in a forest. They have to walk slowly or perfectly in time with you, but there's still the crunching sound of leaves. "We should probably leave," Mike said. Agreeing with Mike, we quickened our pace back down the trail. The slow crunch of leaves turned into a heavy stepping. As we ran, we could hear something alongside us, stalking us through the woods. The noises of something out there made us too paranoid, and we started sprinting at this point. I'm a heavier guy, but I outran both Mike and Bobby. I turned to look into the woods, and I saw the black outline of what looked like a person behind a tree, just staring at me. I saw this for a few seconds before sprinting again. The figure must have been at least 7 feet tall. When we made it out of the woods, we could still hear the thing not far behind us. I fumbled for my keys, struggling to get them in the lock, but as I did, I noticed that whatever was stalking us in the woods seemed to be walking back and forth along the edge of the woods. I decided not to question it and got in the car with Mike and Bobby and slammed the gas to get us out of there. When we finally made it home, there were no more issues. We were never stalked outside of those woods, and nothing seemed to follow us home. One of my biggest questions from the entire experience is what would have happened to us if we decided to go up the hill from the beginning. Would the thing stalking us have come up from behind us? I shudder to think what would have happened then. We hope to go back someday, but for now, we're just thankful to be alive.
My story is something I'm still terrified by. But because of the person I am, perhaps as a way to cope as well, I may come across a bit of light in telling it. Most people consider me an intimidating soul by the nature of my stature. I'm not the type to screw around in specific situations, such as when I have to tell someone off or I'm unfortunately in a situation for which I can't avoid an altercation. Needless to say, I've never really had someone approach me in public thinking of getting the best of me. A half a year ago, I was at the house, rolling some joints with my girlfriend. I live mostly in the middle of nowhere, and there are a lot of wooded areas around the place, though not fully a forest per se. My girlfriend and I hadn't smoked much that day, and we were home alone, and seeing as we could do anything we wanted, we decided, hell yeah baby, let's smoke these while taking a bit of a nature walk, and have an orgy with some forest fairies or something. The idea was golden, at the time. My girlfriend sat next to me while I rolled and harvested the God's gift into the paper. We were talking about random shit, and listening to heavy metal as I focused on rolling those sweet, sweet spliffs. Anyways, I finished rolling and decided to finally leave my house for the woods. The joints in hand, we headed off, and I should also mention it was summer, around 7-ish, so it was dark. The first hour of blazing trails, if you get what I mean, was perfection. We talked, blazed, made out, the usual couple stuff. We were on the second joint just walking along the paths when we see this big, giant flat rock, like a pancake boulder. We were like, awesome, and we laid down on top of it. We're holding hands and being all cute and smoking our doobies, when we start hearing noises. I like to mention by this point the sun will start to set soon, maybe another 30 minutes. We're obviously really freaked out by the sounds. Then, the thought occurred to me that this was some good stuff, and maybe it was probably just making us paranoid. I mean, there's wildlife and stuff out here, so wouldn't you be curious if something was chilling in your backyard? After some silence, and just as we were about to chillax again, we hear another noise that we know damn well is not an animal. It sounded a lot like a sharp run along a rock. We sit up and look around, and then at each other. We were very perplexed. Then the realization hits us that whoever or whatever is out there is most definitely wasn't the forest fairies we had planned on having an orgy with, that's for sure. We stand for a minute or so, and then we hear a big snap, like a tree branch snapping with a ton of force. And then we hear a bunch of fast footsteps. Someone was sprinting, and I was panicking. Being in such an unsafe situation in the deep woods, I urged my girlfriend Kimber to haul ass back to the house with me. Now, Kimber and I aren't necessarily sporty people. We are more of the academic bunch our whole lives. We weren't completely out of shape, but looking back on it, things would have been a hell of a lot easier if we did cross-country or track or something. Kimber and I, sprinting now, and getting caught up by all the trees and branches and sticks scraping us while we run, we hear this person who's running after us shouting and acting like some insane hillbilly. This freaks us out, and we begin sprinting faster while huffing and puffing. It's literally reminiscent of like a fat kid doing a mile or something. The person is unfortunately gaining on us now, and as I look back, I can totally see him. He's an older guy, maybe like 40 years old, give or take. His hair is long and thin, and he's scraggly looking. It's at this point I realize he's gaining on us, and I try to run faster. Kimber makes a turn, and we turn and see the lights of my house in the almost darkness. I'm not sure if the dude was too close to process the sudden turn or not, but he didn't seem to pursue us. At any rate, seeing the porch light we will forever refer to as the beacon of hope makes us run even harder. Turning back, there is no sign of the guy, and we make it into the clearing of my backyard. My girlfriend quickly gets me inside, and we lock the doors and slam the blinds shut. I feel my back pocket for my phone, and realize that of course it must have fell out while I was running and is somewhere in those dang trees. My girlfriend's phone is naturally dead, and we had no house phone because who has those nowadays? My girlfriend starts having a panic attack, and I plug her phone in and start charging it. I turn off all the lights except for those by our doors. I saw no sign of that man for the rest of the night and for the rest of the time I lived there. We called the cops and they surveyed the area, but they found nothing. The whole thing was terrifying. I just don't know. I can only assume it was worse for my girlfriend than it was for me because of her anxiety, but I definitely think about it from time to time still. It gives me the willies. When I was 13, maybe 14, my best friend and I used to steal metal dust caps off cars and put them on our BMXs. We always thought it looked cool. We were young and dumb. Anyway, one night we were bored and decided to go looking around some estates for some dust caps. We eventually settled on a target about 15 minutes from where I lived. The place was small, but it was also almost completely surrounded by woods. We rummaged through the place, but we only make it out with one dust cap. I'm getting ready to take the dust cap off when I notice a man walking by. Crap, he's seen us, I think to myself. After a few seconds of nothing happening, my friend decided we should wait for the man to go back inside, and we wait by some bushes by the little pathway facing the woods. As we were chilling, trying to act normal, I heard the sound of branches breaking. I looked up and saw a man's face, staring at us from behind a large tree, at the front of the woods next to the path, about 10 meters away from us. I ran as fast as I could, on instinct, not saying anything to my friend, as I just assumed he'd seen him as well. Anyway, I ran nearly all the way home before noticing my mate wasn't with me. I then loitered around near his house, hoping that he would catch up, but he didn't. I began freaking out and trying to decide what I'd do, as I wasn't going to leave him behind. I slowly walked back to where the guy had been seen last, but initially, I didn't dare go any further as I was afraid of what he would do if he saw me again. I eventually decided I'd suck it up and go back to the estate and see if I could find my mate. Keep in mind we didn't have cell phones back then. I couldn't find him, and the more I searched, the more I was thinking, I'm going to get into so much trouble for this. I'm going to have to go to his house and tell his dad. This was the last-ditch plan, obviously, as he had been in deep crap before if he found out we were at night doing this. Thankfully, though, as I headed back, assured of my doom, I saw my mate fast walking. Where have you been? I asked him. Getting these, 2 for you, 2 for me, he said. He had 4 skull-shaped dust caps in his hand. They were super cool. Did you not see that weird guy in the woods? I asked. Yeah, he wanted me to come over to him. I just told him to F off and went back for the dusties. Here I was, crapping myself over some weirdo, and my mate wasn't even bothered. Anyway, we went home, and all was forgotten until years later when I moved out to my parents' house and into a flat of my own, but in the same estate as my parents. I had bad insomnia at the time, and this was when I was around 20 or so I used to take my dog on long walks when I couldn't sleep. One night, roughly around 3 a.m.-ish, I put my coat on and headed out with my dog. I ended up going on the top of this housing estate. As I was walking around the perimeter of the estate on my right of the woods was on my left, and this dog stopped walking around 20 meters in front of me. I didn't pay much attention of it until I got closer. The hairs were standing up on the back of her neck, and she was baring her teeth at something in the woods. I stopped for a moment and distinctly remembered the smell of someone smoking cigarettes right next to me. It goes without saying I sprinted the hell out of there and never went back again. Sometimes I think of going back there during the day just to walk through the actual woods, but F that, I haven't built up the courage yet. Stay safe, everyone. The world is a very weird place, especially the woods. This actually happened this year in January. We went this new year to my grandparents' house to see some relatives and to visit them because we are barely able to normally. They live in a small village with around 300 or so people. Most of them are around my grandparents' age or maybe even older. Besides a very, very old playground, there is a small shrine circle 1 kilometer away from the village. To reach it, we always have to walk through a forest. I know it sounds kind of like a cliche, but it's quite dark in there, even when it's still the daytime. We arrived around 4 p.m., so it was already quite late and we still had to wait for most of our relatives to arrive. My brother, let's call him Ryan for now, suggested that we should visit the shrine with the children that are already here, so they don't have to get too bored, because honestly, there wasn't really anything going on and there's nothing to do in my grandparents' house. We asked around if anyone wants to come with us, and in the end, we had about 6 people in our group. Ryan, my girlfriend, and I were the oldest, so we kept an eye on the children who were walking with us. Ryan walked a bit behind the group and my girlfriend and I were walking ahead. The reason why Ryan walked behind us was that in the area there are a lot of stray dogs, and he wanted to make sure that the kids were safe because of the oldest one was our 10-year-old sister, and she was only 4'4". If a stray dog came and approached them, they wouldn't be able to defend themselves, and we would probably be a little too far away. So to prevent any incidents, we walked like this. When we arrived at the shrine, we prayed and then sat down on a few stones near the shrine, talking to each other while the kids played a few rounds of tag. Around the shrine area was a high wire fence so the visitors weren't bothered by animals or the other earlier mentioned stray dogs. So we let them run around and do their game and have fun. The only way to enter this area were the steps, so we didn't worry too much. We probably spent nearly an hour there before we decided to return home because it was already getting quite dark and we didn't want to wander in the forest at night. When we called the children back to us, one of our cousins asked if they could take Bada with them. We were a bit confused until Ryan said that she probably meant an imaginary friend or something like that. Honestly, it was a bit creepy, but my girlfriend quickly said that we could visit Bada tomorrow and we really need to leave now because it's getting late. They were okay with this and so we left. This time, I was the one walking behind the group. After we walked for a while, the cousin from earlier pointed into the woods and said, "Bada!" We turned our head in the direction, not seeing anything. Ryan told us to stop walking and to be silent for a moment. Later, he told us that he wanted to hear if there was any kind of growling. Of course we heard nothing. My girlfriend used her cell phone to light up the area a bit. She didn't have a flashlight on her phone, so she just turned on the brightness. Honestly, I was kind of glad that her phone didn't have a flashlight. After a few moments, we decided to continue walking, but my girlfriend still used her cell phone to light up the area. Suddenly she jumped up a bit even though it looked like she was pulling her shoulders back. We asked if there was something wrong. She whispered, "Left side." We still didn't know what she meant, but frozen, we saw the 2 glowing points in the distance. We first thought that this might just be some metal reflecting from the light. But then, the points partly disappeared and reappeared, so it had to be something moving. I really felt the urge to cry and scream. Normally I'm not creeped out easily, but this was even too much for my brother, and he was in the military. It was definitely too large for a dog or a raccoon. When we heard that leaves were rustling like someone was walking through the bush in our direction, all of us agreed that we should pick up the kids and get the heck out of there. We were running while my brother and I were carrying our cousins and my little sister were holding hands with my girlfriend. When we finally reached our grandparents' house, which was directly beside this forest, my sister and our male cousin were crying. Of course the adults were asking us what happened. We told them what happened and they kind of believed us and told us we shouldn't go there tomorrow. This maybe could have been a creep or some kind of weirdo. But to ease our worries a bit, my grandmother said we should place some salt lines in front of the windows and doors. It sounds a bit silly, but we felt safer when she did that. But the worst part is not over yet. Ryan, my girlfriend and I shared a room, but we couldn't sleep at all, so we talked a bit about what happened earlier. After a while, we did become tired and tried to sleep, but soon the peaceful silence would be interrupted by something that sounded like claws walking on wood. You know the sound when your dog walks over a wooden floor? But this was way slower, one claw at a time, agonizingly slow. At this point, not one of us was even moving, and we were definitely barely breathing. We hoped that it was just a dog or a fox. When it became silent again, we waited for a few more minutes and then we moved as far as we could away from the window. It took a while, but we finally fell asleep at some point. My father woke us up saying that we shouldn't have gotten so wild. At first, we didn't know what he meant until we realized that we were sleeping cuddled together, covered in several blankets. After this, the next 2 nights nothing happened, but we didn't visit the shrine while we were there for the rest of our trip. When we drove home, we asked our father if he believed us that there was something out there, and he said he did. Of course, our mother, who is a rational person, told him to shut up because he could start something and scare my sister. I still believe that whatever was there didn't have friendly intentions. I'll have to say, this is probably the scariest experience I've ever had, and I'm going to share it with you. It started when I got a babysitting job for my neighbors. They had to go to a meeting. I was about 18 years old when this happened, and it was really easy taking care of the baby. I had a really fun time. This was until the baby started crying. I had a very hard time calming it down. When I did, I started hearing banging on the walls. I opened the door to see what was going on. I found nothing, so I closed the door. I put the baby to sleep and rested on the couch watching some TV. I heard banging coming again from somewhere in the walls. I got annoyed quickly. I opened the door again and walked around the house with a flashlight and a knife. I used a knife just in case, safety precautions. Again, I didn't find anything out there until I heard this loud and horrific screech. I covered my ears and went to the back of the house because that's where the screech was emanating from. I then looked to find this lanky, tall, massive beast with the head of a goat and a human body. It stood on 2 legs. It looked down at me, screeching yet again. I was shocked and scared. I barely even moved. I then flashed a light into its eyes and stabbed the beast over and over, about 14 times before running away into the nearby forest. I left the knife in his chest as it ran. I then ran back into the house, closed and locked all of the doors. I also closed all the blinds. I ran to the baby's room and made sure the baby was safe. I then stayed in the room of the baby till the parents came back. I couldn't relax at all after that. They paid me $50 and then thanked me. I then walked home traumatized. I had to get rid of my clothes because they were covered in blood, but luckily I was able to cover my shirt with my jacket so the family didn't notice. I only got 2 hours of sleep that night, and I was pretty tired at school in the morning. I even slept in my first period class. I found out that thing was from one of my friends. I still don't really know if it was this thing they call Goatman, but that's what my friends seem to think it is. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed these creepy stories from deep in the woods, be sure to hit that like button as it helps me out a ton. If you're new to the channel, why not subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss a new video. I upload them almost every single day, and all things strange and anomalous. If you have a story you'd like to share in a future video, be sure to send it in to the swampdweller.net website or the email that you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. What do you think some of these things that are lurking in the woods could be? It seems like a trending theme here as a lot of people are smoking some of that good kush out in the woods. Personally, I've experienced some of that good kush myself, and I've never seen any crazy monsters while hiking and doing it myself. So, I don't think they're having a bad trip. But maybe, just maybe they are. Let me know what you think down below. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.